Are we ready to go?
We are live and ready to go. Hello and welcome. Today's episode, we have a wonderful discussion lined up for you.
Hello,
We'll be
hello.
discussing humans, AI, all the good things. Now, just a refresher for those who haven't tuned in a while, the initial idea can be self-fed. However, the exploratory key topic points have to be generated from ChatGPT. Of course, at least a few discussion questions have to be generated from ChatGPT, and we can always go off topic on any interesting conversation points that are not generated from ChatGPT. Now, it's been a while. We've been, in and out. Lots of things have been going on.
And then about shaking all about.
Right. We've been traveling, both of us. We've been going different places. We've been exploring different side hustles, and we'll talk about those more further into the podcast, of course. But the idea is that we're back. I'm glad to be back. It's been a while. Of course, we have our coffee. Normally, we do these in the middle of the day. How does it feel to be doing it in the middle of the night instead?
I'm excited. The coffee is kicking in and we are going to be having a blast.
Okay, good. Well, the first thing we have for today, it's been a while, so I just want to get kind of back into the groove of things, is still related to ChatGPT, then we'll kind of go off topic a little bit, I guess, is jobs from ChatGPT. It's been a little bit more seasoned. People have been using it more for their jobs than before. And since our initial discussion of this back in January and beginning of February, a lot more jobs have been created due to ChatGPT, and a lot more are being created and using AI, artificial intelligence. Now,
And
go ahead.
not only that, but there are people who currently have jobs and are using ChatGPT and integrating it successfully into their work and into their proofreading, etc.
Right, exactly. We've discussed all of that before, but it's good to kind of recap and get started back onto it. Now, one thing I wanted to kind of bring up here that's a little bit different is that there's a difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. Machine learning algorithms have been around for decades, centuries. I'm making that up, but they've been around for a very,
They're
very
pretty
long
ancient in
time.
technology
They're
terms.
exactly so related to computers and infrastructure. Machine learning is the backbone of most large algorithms out there. Take, for example, algorithms that do facial recognition. That's machine learning in the simplest forms. It takes your face, and then based on your facial details, it determines whether someone else is you or not.
Or indeed the YouTube algorithm, which this is the first time you're watching this and on YouTube, thank you, algorithm, because that is the very reason through which you're watching this show.
Exactly. So having a machine learning and differentiating it from artificial intelligence is something that I wanted to kind of touch on. Now, it is a very broad topic, but AI, from my perspective, from what I've seen and interacted from, it relies heavily on a backbone of data and then takes that data and extrapolates it into different forms. So from what I've seen, machine learning is more just a singular output. You can have an algorithm that generates, pictures of the sunset, for example. But machine learning is very basic. It will take previous background images and kind of use those to generate further pictures. But AI, on the other hand, will take those images and completely start over from scratch. It will make new images that have never before been created based on your prompts, your text prompts, or your speech prompts, and using the data that it has. So a little bit different from machine learning, but still, I think the basis is very similar. So it's very important to, when you're talking about ChatGPT, you have to remember you're not referring necessarily to machine learning. You're referring to an advanced, intelligent algorithm that has been developed based off of machine learning, but taking it a step further.
There is one caveat to that, in machine learning, there's the concept where bad data produces bad results, whereby if the data which you are feeding into the machine is faulty, you're going to be getting a bad outcome, which would not necessarily be accurate and would not be achieving the goals you have set. Now, in artificial intelligence, one of the problems which many people have with the models which are being created, the data which you are feeding into the algorithm fundamentally leads to the outcome. And if that data is bad, then you do not get the best results.
So you're saying that for artificial intelligence, the outcome is based strictly off of the prompt you provided, as opposed to the resources that the prompt has.
Not just the prompts, also the resources behind it. If the only resources which let's just take Reddit, for example. Okay, let's say you made an AI purely based on Reddit posts. Now, in Reddit, it's very, especially in some forums, it's very acceptable to completely, make fun of other people and to, give them some good old-fashioned internet talk and trolling. Now, if the AI then takes that and then says, okay, this is an acceptable form of discourse, then that is what it's going to be using in order to create its responses. It's a bit like a maladaptive child in that way. So you have to fully consider all the ramifications of every part of it.
Right. I totally agree. And I guess that's really the basis of our discussion regarding these jobs that were created, and that people have to differentiate whether they're using a machine learning algorithm and AI. So, and know that both of those topics have behind it the ability to be correct versus the ability to be incorrect based on the prompts, but also the machine data that it has behind it. And I think one of the unique things that ChatGPT is allowing is that people can provide it with data and information, and that data and information that's provided will be implemented potentially in future releases of the AI program, the OpenAI program related to ChatGPT and other. They have voice and they have image prompts and things of that nature. So utilizing these services allows the AI model to kind of grow from a large spread of people providing to it, as opposed to a normal prompt. A machine learning algorithm is fed very specific data types that are less broad and less interactive than what this is allowing.
Another aspect of machine learning, which does not apply to AI, is with machine learning, you come up with a weighting for the various data types. So if you are to come up with a model to, let's just say figure out which bike is the best, based on, cost efficiency, you're going to assign a certain weight to price, a certain weight to customer reviews, a certain percentage weight to the material type and various other variables. And you're going to use that in order to generate the response. Now, with an AI algorithm, you are not using the weightings because you're expecting the AI to figure out what is the most appropriate weighting based on your situation.
That makes sense. But overall, it's really just dependent on the functionality that you're trying to receive from it. While the weighting is based on the history and backing, there's also, I guess, a certain level of expectancy of the developers and the contributors to be providing the correct data and information in order for the entire community to benefit from it. Now, the main use of these AI models, whether it's ChatGPT or machine learning, in my opinion, are really targeting very similar demographics. Machine learning is available to developers who want to utilize the API for certain aspects. Data analysis, AI trainers, cybersecurity professionals, all these different jobs that are created or that are already created and utilize machine learning algorithms on a daily basis. I don't think that that's unique in any way. But what I can see is that the AI model is opening up the door for other professions, such as education. We've seen a lot of that over the last few months, a lot of education perspectives, a lot of educators have come out and openly expressed either their extreme agreement or their extreme disappointment. It's really just a two-way street at that point. Yeah, and nobody's in the middle with that. They're either really happy with it or really disappointed.
But even so, like the whole concept, for example, of a personal assistant, which is something which people, even today, many people are paying a serious amount of money to have a personal assistant in order to improve their productivity. It is no longer required, considering how much functionality your phone has. And also, even ChatGPT, let's say you want to learn Python, right? You don't know anything about Python, and you have a project and you need to know learn Python. You just feed into the ChatGPT prompts. I know nothing about Python, but have a reasonable computing background. Create for me a detailed plan in which I could learn in 30 days by learning for 1 hour a day Python. And then it will give you a very detailed plan. You follow it, and Bob's your uncle. You know Python. So there is a lot to be gained educationally from these tools. It's just a question of how are you using it.
Right. And I think it's also going to open up a large spread of people who are utilizing the interwebs and AI platforms to learn more. However, that may also reduce their productivity in a school environment as well. So you might find that over the next 10 years or so, you'll have a lot more people who are not going into school. You've already started to see that. You have a lot more people that are taking certificates and doing physical, manual labor such as plumbing or carpentry. They're going back to the trade schools as opposed to going to college to get a 4-year degree. But at the same time, you're also having people who are trying to be educated
a
as
trend,
well.
or is that just a regression towards the mean? Because historically, it was only a small percentage of people who actually went to college. The fact that some people have recently went is an exception to the rule.
Correct. It's been very affordable and very available for a lot of people. However, I think the background and the jobs that were created and geared specifically towards people who had such and such degree, I think that's going to become a lot less of a requirement overall, especially in the job field and the job functionalities, because a lot of this information you can learn freely, and as long as you're proficient in it, then you can move forward. For example, you can use the AI to basically create for you a full college curriculum, and then use the AI to follow said college curriculum that it creates for you. That's how powerful it is. You can simply tell the thing that you want to become a doctor, and it'll tell you all the different steps you need to become a doctor. Then you can break each of those steps down on your own and say, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that. How do I do this? Show me pictures, give me links, resources, etc.
It's pretty insane.
And keep in mind with GPT-4, I've never played around with it, but from what I understand, you can basically use the AI API to connect it to all kinds of different platforms. So once you know your specific kind of requirements and desires, you can connect it to these different websites, and the AI can learn even more because it's then connected to the internet and available to browse these different places. You get the resources, the information and knowledge specifically from the same sources the schools are directing their students to, simply because you're connecting it directly to the AI platform. And you're using the AI more of like a teacher as well as a resource guide all together in one. Teachers aren't, totally proficient in all the resources, and other way around. All the resources are not totally proficient with all the teachers that are teaching the topics.
But what's also pretty interesting is we are seeing effectively a de-urbanization that is occurring as a result of chat. It's not just Chat GPT and AI. It's many factors, but because of work from home and because of the fact that people are no longer as interested in getting a corporate job and a college degree and are perfectly happy to become plumbers and electricians, it's no longer looked down upon and seen as something which is a bad career choice. People are no longer choosing to live in big cities because the attractions that a big city used to offer and used to be seen as, wow, this is something pretty incredible. It's no longer it no longer has quite the same draw, and we're seeing a balance, which it's about time it addresses itself and leading to a better form of living where people are not designed to be living 1 million to a square mile, and it's not good for people. And yeah, that's
with that point in mind, making sure that you're getting your job requirements within a specific area that you like to be in. While you're correct, people do like to stay within a short amount of space. People don't like to move. The nature of humans is to not really have much change at all. I think we've talked about that in the past. Not having much change is a very important. It's a very important thing that people are able to transition into different locations. Whenever you have people who don't want to move, it allows stability in the environment. That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't allow the environment to change or fluctuate, and it allows people who are visiting to come back and see the exact same thing again without much disruption. And I think another important factor when it comes to the job market in your area is to make sure that you're creating your own business. having a local productivity and local business practices that are, within intercommunal within your local, I guess, square mile or 10 square miles or even 50 square miles, having business practices that you're, talking with, that you're connecting with, and also creating on your own, I think can be a very big help to kind of mitigate the factors of remote work and the job productivity goals that you're bringing up. We've talked in the past that remote work has started to become a very big thing, but keep in mind that even though remote work is becoming a big thing, and a lot of people are,
it's seeing a lot of pushback. It's not. It remains to be seen
Right.
exactly how big it's going to be and how things would actually work out. We don't yet know how the chips are going to fall.
Right. So that's right. There's a lot of pushback that's being done with remote work. A lot of companies are, they're feeling the side effects of it, whatever those may be. Each company specific to
My personal theory is it's down to mismanagement, in the sense that the way you manage people in the office is that you say, okay, here are your hours, and the work will naturally come. Now, when it comes to remote work, what has to happen is the work has to be goal-based, meaning over the course of the next 24 hours of the workday, these are the 8 things which you are expected to accomplish, or these are the 4 things which you're expected to accomplish, and it should be a metric-based workplace rather than an hours-based workplace, and that's part of the
that's
issue.
work-based by work-based. It really depends on like you said, the management, but also the person itself. Remote work is not going to be meant for everyone with that in mind. But I think a large goal that a lot of people can have is to start some kind of side hustle. I think that will help a lot especially in terms of teaching people how to make their own goals and stick with them and reach them. Starting their own small little niche business doesn't have to be big. Doesn't have to make millions of dollars. You can make hundreds of dollars. It's just more about keeping you interactive physically, mentally, and locally all together. Some of the key things and aspects regarding side hustles, it takes a lot of the challenges of working a full-time job away, because when you're working a side hustle, you're concentrating on what you want to do in a lot of cases. It doesn't have to be whatever makes money. It's what you would like to do. Some people like to paint. Some people like to, do physical painting. Some people like to make pictures, that kind of stuff. So whatever you enjoy most, you can turn that into a side hustle. You can
And who
make a
knows?
small.
Sometimes these things grow, and
Sometimes, exactly. Sometimes they make money. Sometimes they make bank. Sometimes they don't. But the whole point is not necessarily to make money. The whole point is to enjoy what you're doing and have like a hobby almost, but also turn it into a potentially profitable business if done correctly. Some people, they're able to sell their paintings even if they only sell them for $5. That's a lot of money for some people, and a lot of people don't even get anything for their paintings. They just have hundreds of paintings sitting around the house, and they don't know what to do with
then it's
them.
not a side hustle. That's just a hobby.
That's a hobby, but I'm saying turn that hobby into a side hustle in some way. It doesn't have to be very big. It can be very small. For example, you can mow your neighbor's lawn. If you do the math on that, that's 3 hours a day. If you have 2 neighbors or even 3 or 4 neighbors in some cases, and you mow each of their lawns, that might take an hour for each lawn to make sure it's done right. That's 1 hour per day you could be doing, and you can charge them $25 a week.
That kind of ties into the whole compound interest thing.
Right. Just a little bit goes a long way at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Making sure that you contribute to the different small pieces of your life and focusing on one thing. Also, I think we mentioned this in the past, not taking on too much. I think a lot of people have reached the point. Sometimes I
Guilty
get there
as
myself.
charged.
Exactly. Taking on way too many things at once, and then whether you get burnt out or not, it's a different story. That's not even related to this conversation. But taking on way too many things and having you won't see the fruits of your labor. When you have 15 things, you can only work on how many of them at a time per day. Let's say you work on all 15 of your projects every single day.
That's one of the things which come with being an adult, is you need to learn that saying no is more powerful than saying yes. Because initially you're just saying yes to every single opportunity which comes your way. Then you realize you're way overextending yourself, and then you have to say no.
Right. That's what happens when it turns into debt. People, they borrow too much. They're 18 and they have a car loan of $50,000. They've got $20,000 in credit card debt. They might have a mortgage too. This is what happens when you turn 18 and you have the freedom.
Here's the solution: do not buy a car. Except only paying cash. Do not go into debt. And if you have any credit cards, perform a plastectomy, and live on cash. It's pretty complex, I know, but it works.
especially when you're 18 and you have no money. That's exactly what you need to do. At the end of the day, you need to save up money. Regardless of how you spend the money, whether you use a credit card or not to spend money, that's not even the same conversation. It's more just like don't buy things that you can't afford. That's the basis. If you don't have the money to pay for it, it shouldn't be bought. Even if you buy it, even if you were to take out a loan at the end of the day, as long as you have $400 million in the bank, okay, it's no problem. You could pay it off tomorrow, even if something goes wild.
I do wonder, how did it come to this? Because if you look at society today, everyone is so overextended on loans. How did we get here?
Well, the loans themselves, they stimulate the growth in the economy overall. So by giving people more access to cash, the economy and the environment is allowed to grow at an exponential rate that it otherwise would not have been able to. However, that also comes with a drawback of people who are not able to successfully manage themselves also have access to that same funding that other people do. So when you have the successful people having the funding, you also have the people who are not able to manage their finances also have access to that funding because they have the same guidelines in place for those people. Now, you can't weed out those people. It's just not possible. But that's exactly what happens. When you have an influx of capital that's able to be borrowed, you're able to grow your economy much more effectively and much more quickly than if you didn't have any money at all.
Granted, but at the same time, the extent to which the society has overextended itself at this point is a bit ridiculous.
Overextending, I would say that that's a little bit of a stretch. You know, when you have something like large governmental loans that are being provided, you know, is it really overextending if they're able to be paid back? Or
We're a bit too close to default for my liking. So, yes,
okay.
we are
To
overextending.
each their own. Everyone has, you know, you're not in charge of the governmental funding.
Shame. Because you know what I'll do if I was in charge? I'll be tearing up the checkbook.
You wouldn't spend like you're in Congress.
No, I'll be probably telling everyone, you're fired.
Very good.
Yeah.
You know, so to each their own, but at the end of the day, having a large influx of capital, regardless of where it comes from, that's what helps stimulate the economy. So when you have borrowing power and you have an increased availability of borrowing power to society, that definitely helps stimulate the growth of the overall economy, which makes the quality of life for everybody involved much better as well. But it also comes with the side effect of some people are not able to handle it. So you have, on the other side of the spectrum, you have people who are not able to maintain and manage it. Now, with the side hustles, though, that also avoids a lot of those issues. When you have the side hustle, that might create the extra cash flow you need to provide your quality of life that you expect. You know, let's say you have a car that costs $300 a month. You know, whether you borrowed it, leased it, whatever the case is, having your side hustle that makes $300 a month, that could easily pay for that. You know, it's just another toy that you have. But let's say you enjoy this toy that you have. You paid a lot of money for that car at the end of the day. You know, providing that little bit of funding that you need just by doing something you enjoy, that can really help out in the long term. And like you said, it's really compound interest. A little bit goes a long way at the end of the day. Now, it also frees you from time. You know, when you have a side hustle, you feel like you're less involved in something that you don't want to be. You know, it frees your time in terms of the enjoyment. It feels like you're doing a hobby at that point if you really like what you're doing. And so your time overall, you're going to feel less constrained to working, you know, more constrained to having a lot of freedom and flexibility that you didn't otherwise have before. And, you know, maybe it also allows you to kind of have flexible weekends and evenings. Have you found anything? I know you've done a couple of side hustles, you know, in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I have a side business, so that's...
So what have you found that it's kind of contributed towards?
life bills, cash.
So it's giving you money.
It's money. It's a lot of skills because my eventual goal is to be owning my own business or my own startup, etc. And what I found with the side hustle is it gives me a lot of these skills in terms of there are many hurdles which one faces when they are starting a business and figuring out how to run a business successfully. And by doing it with a side hustle and having the knowledge that I have a 9 to 5 and have the safety of knowing that I have the paycheck coming in at the end of every week, I could be more bold with my decision making, and it gives A, more leeway to fail, and B, it gives you more of a learning opportunity whereby you're able to understand what are the hurdles which you have to overcome in order to successfully manage this business, and then it's something which would definitely be applied in the future.
I think you touched on a key point at the beginning regarding, you know, your 9 to 5. You want to make sure that your 9 to 5 is not taking over the side hustle time, and vice versa. You want to make sure that your 9 to 5 is not being drowned out by your side hustle is not being drowned out by your 9 to 5 working. You know, make sure that your employer knows you have to leave at a certain time. You have other obligations you have to meet. There's no reason for you to stay extra and to overcompensate on your time job or your salary job unless it's a requirement of that position. And you need to set those clear boundaries. You know, that's something we've discussed in the past regarding your work and life balance. In one of our previous episodes, you have to set work and life balance. You have to set your responsibilities for your home and your work separately. You have to make those boundaries clear from the get-go. And if you don't, what's going to happen? You're going to find yourself working while you're in the bathroom at home, you know, trying to enjoy life, and you know you're having a steak, and all of a sudden you got to take 3 work calls in the middle of the evening, and it's just going to completely destroy your day. So making sure that you communicate that side hustle and that with your employer, and making sure that you're separating. They don't even have to know you're doing a side hustle. Just
My employer does not know. They never asked, and if they did ask, I would be comfortable saying. And there's a chance that just by chance they're going to find out one day, but ultimately,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you do. At the end, you just have to make sure that you're differentiating in your mind. You have to differentiating the time and the location and the space from each other. You know, that's something that I've seen a lot of people do. Go to a different space. That way, you can mentally separate each of your life situations. You know, for example, a lot of people have an issue with working physically in their house because they see their kitchen, they see their bathroom, they see their living room and dining room, and they can't concentrate on their work situation. So that's, I guess, going back to it briefly, one benefit of working in work is it gives you that separation, that physical separation of not seeing all of those different distractions.
That is true. But the great thing about side hustles as well is if you want to eventually create your own startup, or you could build up your side hustle to the point where you could then quit your main job and your 9 to 5 and then start working on your startup, and then you have the knowledge of the fact that your side hustle is going to be generating income, and that would give you the flexibility to create your startup.
Exactly. And of course, making sure that you're delegating these resources and tasks that you can't do to other people. You know, when you're a startup, it's very difficult to do so. You might not have the finances, the resources. However, making sure that other people are assisting you as much as possible can also make you feel less bogged down with your time and make you feel more free together with everything that's going on. You have your 9 to 5, you have your work-life balance, as well as your side hustle, making sure that those are all separated in some aspect, but then also delegating those side hustle tasks to somebody once you're able to afford it. That can also help out. Whether it's taking on a partner as well, that's an idea I think a lot of people who are starting a side hustle don't necessarily realize is they can have multiple people starting up that company together. Get somebody who's passionate about the project
that
or is able to contribute.
Because you need to then have a clearly cut contract, which many people do not think about in the beginning. It's like, oh, let's start a side hustle. Oh, we're going to figure out the money later. The problem is, by the time you're figuring out the money, there's already a chunk of cash on the table. And when that's the case, people change their views very quickly. That's why it's important, if that is a situation, to have a contract clearly delineating how much is each person going to be getting and what are the responsibilities of each party.
Right. And so making sure that everybody has an agreement from the get-go of the different responsibilities, that's obviously a factor you want to take into consideration. But still, I think the idea is there. A lot of people don't realize or even think about having a second or third person available. When you start something, let's say it's painting, like we just talked about, you're probably part of a painting club at that point. You might have multiple friends who do painting as well. You might be the lone person in your neighborhood who does painting, but you can always find somebody, at least whether it's remotely or even locally, especially locally. That would be very important for such a business. Finding somebody who's also just as passionate with that type of work that you're trying to provide. You can use their resources and they can kind of use your resources. Even without a contract, you can kind of work together to provide that side hustle. Just taking that painting example further, you don't necessarily have to have a contract. You don't have to work together necessarily. But let's say you set aside Wednesday nights to go paint with the same person. You have 2 people in a room. You're communicating, you're talking, you're giving different ideas. You don't have to have a contract in that case. It's more just like having the ability to communicate with somebody with your same side hustle environment that would be, I think, a really major key that a lot of people can add to their business.
What do you call two painters in a room? I don't know. What do you call two painters in a room?
It's two painters. That's it.
Yeah, it's definitely an art form waiting to happen.
Very good. Very good. Now, we've talked about the different side hustles and prioritizing setting goals. One thing I wanted to touch on, before we wrap it up here for the night is, while there's different side hustles available and different jobs, make sure that you pick something that you enjoy. That's something a lot of people are kind of on the fence about, and you don't have to think too hard about it. Just go through your list of 5 different things you do, over the course of a month. People have a list of things they normally tackle, and find one thing you enjoy and want to explore more. It doesn't have to be a long-term side hustle. It could be a short-term side hustle. A side hustle is exactly that. It's something that will make a small amount of money over a short period of time.
The thing is, people should not get discouraged because you're initially going to start it and you're going to enjoy it. But then there's going to be other miscellaneous things coming to, which come about as a result. There's going to be the bookkeeping, there's going to be the marketing, and it's going to be things which are pretty mundane and pretty annoying tasks. And you should not just lose sight of the overall goal as to what it is and how you enjoy it.
And that's a good point. Making sure that you're keeping good records of everything that you're doing and everything that you want to do. When you're starting a business, you're going to find yourself very quickly. If you make money, you need to know exactly where that money goes. Otherwise, you're going to owe a lot of money. If you don't know your numbers,
you don't know your business.
Right. That's a good point. Overall, I think we've gone through a lot of different ideas when it comes to side hustles. But the main thing that I really think will be important for a lot of people is figuring out what type of side hustle they want, and going through the list. Even if you don't have something that you do, you can always look online for different ideas. Reddit. I know a lot of people go to Reddit to find different ideas. I've seen a lot of posts. I've been browsing a lot of.
A lot of people just go on Reddit. The stuff you can find on there is interesting.
Well, I've been browsing different things like home renovation. I've been browsing, financial topics, IT topics, everything like that. I work in IT right now, and going through the IT topics and seeing different people do startups. A lot of people, I noticed, startup MSPs, which is managed service providers. So basically doing other people's IT work for them. A lot of people have been starting that up. A lot of people have been doing. There's a specific subreddit for this. I don't remember the /r right now, but there's a subreddit for people who are doing at-home data centers. That's a thing. People
that's genius.
People spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and they put a data center in their house. And at the end of the day, you do the quick math on it. It pays for itself quite quickly because the equipment, even though it's $15,000, let's say at the end of the day, you're going to spend racks. You're going to spend on internet provided to the server. As long as you can provide clients to that data center and you can provide reliable connectivity and reliable backups. Backups is also a very important key. As long as you can provide reliability and stability and consistency to your clients, then it's very easy to get clients. You start within your location. Of course, that's just a side hustle that I just came up with. I've been browsing. I don't think I'm interested in starting that necessarily, but it's a great way to get into the data center environment, and it could rapidly go quickly. You'll start with 1 rack. You'll start with 2 racks, and this could be your side hustle for several months. It could be side hustle for years.
It sounds like a very good form of passive income once you set it up.
Once you set it up, right. Once it's paid for, that's also a key idea. You want to make sure that it's completely paid for before you go any further and buy more equipment, because you're going to run into a problem very quickly. You're going to salivate over all of the things. Whether you're a mechanic, you're not a mechanic. I'm not really a mechanic, but a mechanic would appreciate. They look at a good car and they salivate over a specific thing they want.
They have an eye for quality.
Every type of profession will salivate over something specific, and IT work is nothing different than that. You find a specific switch or you find a specific server.
That's the great thing about software. Most of the software I salivate over is open source. If I find a new Linux distribution, which is great, hey, I don't need to pay any money for
There's
it.
a lot of hardware that's open source too. You can make it yourself with your backend.
Hardware is never my thing. I'm a software kind of guy.
I'm saying for data centers and things, obviously you want reliability. Making your own hardware for a data center is not usually something that's done. I have a cool story for you. So I was watching a video from Linus Tech Tips a couple of months ago. They did a video on OVH in Germany. So OVH is a popular data center for, they have all over the world. They have servers, so a lot of companies use them. They become very popular in the last probably 10 years or so. They did a video touring the OVH data center in Germany, and the bottom line is OVH decided that the best way to condense and put more computers in a room, which is how they make their money, numbers is how they make their money, is to water cool the entire thing. They water cooled their entire data center.
That works.
Back to front.
That's pretty. That makes a lot of sense considering the heat capacity of water and the diffusion.
Exactly. So forget the heat capacity. It's compactness because heat fins on computers. Totally off topic here, but heat fins on computers, they take up a lot of space. You need a lot of metal in order to dissipate that heat that's provided. So people use air conditioners, people use heat spreaders. Your computer usually contains a heat fin. You look at your back of your laptop, it has a heat spreader on the back. So most computers, most servers, most data centers, they have heat spreaders, they have air conditioners, they have all kinds of things, take a lot of power to cool a computer. So OVH decided they're going to scrap all of that. They're going to make everything water cooled.
Crazy idea. Space data center. You don't need to worry about cooling.
So you wouldn't need to worry about cooling, but something tells me you're going to need to worry about heating.
Well, if it's induced
solar, you can do solar.
Yeah,
but that's the idea. You have to. There's always a compromise, but that's a great idea. It probably would work. Microsoft does data centers underneath the water. OVH does data centers water cooled.
Hell, there's soon going to be
NASA's going to do data centers on the
moon.
Sky.
Yeah, because it's only a matter of time before the internet truly becomes interplanetary. Especially if we start to colonize Mars, then what's going to end up happening is we're going to have internet on Mars. And we're going to have to be setting up satellites on Mars in order to be able to communicate to the internet and build up the internet infrastructure. And then we're going to be having a viable option, which would just be huge data centers on the moon. Just, store the things in minus 200 degrees Celsius and you're good.
I mean, that reminds me, just about a week ago, SpaceX, they launched their rocket, it blew up, and now the FAA is investigating. It's going to be a while before we get to Mars, but it'll be quicker than we think. But
it'll be a fun ride.
Exactly.
Well, I ain't on the first rocket.
I won't be on it either. Exactly. But as I was saying, with OVH data center, they were water cooling the whole thing. They did a whole 9 yards. But think about the logistics of doing something like that. Every piece of equipment has to be custom made. You have your servers, you have your server racks, different sizes, of course, because of the fact you're water cooling. But at the end of the day, you have to now create your own brackets and your own PCBs, your own boards to plug different sockets in, simply because you're using proprietary things. So it's never before been created. It's not something that these large companies provide you. So they had to make their own thing. So there's a whole video detailing, how they made their water cooling blocks for everything. How they can squish so many GPUs into like one server, like 15 GPUs or something like that into one server. And, they saved a lot of space and a lot of money and a lot of time because they're able to condense so many more things into one server than they were before because of the amount of space that heat spreaders and things take up. So just very cool, something very interesting that I was watching, in terms of technology. But I think, going through Reddit, starting up and, exploring the different topics, you can go to, any type of /r that you can find. That a lot of times you'll find something that somebody came up with, that nobody's going to take action on. And even if they do, a lot of these different ideas that are given, they're more local than not. They're the perfect thing for somebody who's trying to do like a small side hustle, just trying to make a little bit of money on the side. Going through Reddit, browsing your favorite topics, and making sure that you're not spending more money than you can. For example, that data center, $10,000-$15,000 you could easily spend to put a giant box in your basement. Not needed. Doesn't make a lot of money right off the bat. So start small. Obviously, with any side hustle, you have to start small. You can't start big. Otherwise, it'd be a startup as opposed to a side hustle.
Well, at least initially.
That's what I'm saying. If you dump $2 million into a project, it's a startup. It's not a side hustle anymore.
Fair enough.
But you want to make sure that you're starting small. You're growing your business slowly, and you're not taking on more work than you can. But once you take on as much work as you can, definitely look into making it your full-time job, making sure that it makes money, that the numbers make sense, and outsourcing to the right people at the right time. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you're the limiting factor of your side hustle and not the side hustle is the limiting factor of you. But then just a couple of things to mull over. Hopefully, lots of people will get started on side hustles. I know we're working on something over the next little bit. Maybe we'll have some news the next time we make a podcast.
Yeah, it might be a topic for a podcast discussion, but that remains to be seen.
I think it'll be by the time we finish our side hustle and it gets off the ground, it'll be a full podcast.
Fair enough.
We can give lots of details and input on it. It'll be a very fun project.
Yeah.
But with that out of the way, we've gone through a lot of things. Please feel free to leave some comments and suggestions on what we should do next for our following episodes. So we look forward to hearing from everyone. Thank you for listening to the Brewed Awakenings. We hope you enjoyed this episode and found it very informative.
Thank you very much, guys.
And like I said, if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe just to stay up to date on any future episodes. Until next time.